All right, welcome everyone. May 11th, it is the second Wednesday of the month, and you know what that means. We are here again for Sustainable in the City. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give everyone just a second, as always, to trickle in. Good episode today. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Sustainable in the City. We're going to get started in just a minute. Give everyone a second to log on. Let some motorcycles go by my office.
Hopefully folks are settling in with some tasty lunch so that you can lunch and learn. Very exciting. I love having this during lunchtime.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm sure a couple of folks are still going to be joining us, but we have so much to get to today that why don't we dive right in to the welcome. So welcome. Today's episode, we're excited to have Heather Lose with us today. She's the editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Conservationist, and she's going to talk to us about communicating for sustainable change. Big topic, important topic. One of the biggest things that you can do for the sustainability movement is just to talk about it. And we are so happy to have you all joining us today at Sustainable in the City. As a reminder, Sustainable in the City is a partnership between my organization, Urban Green Lab, and also Jen Harmon's organization, Zero Waste Nashville. We are your co-hosts for this episode, and we are so excited for you to be joining us and for you to be hearing from Heather Lose today about communicating for sustainable change. And speaking of communicating for sustainable change, this is the perfect episode to plug the climate action survey that might be floating around in your networks about getting your voice heard when it comes to climate action in Nashville. So our friends at Metro and the Civic Design Center are trying to get the survey out as far and wide as possible so that all Nashvillians can have a voice in the city's climate priorities. So the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Committee is organizing recommendations to meet Nashville's goals. And your responses to this survey will inform that process. So we're going to be talking today about how important it is to communicate your passion about sustainability. And this is a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to take your passion, your interest, your knowledge, your community wisdom, and actually put it forth and be able to share with the city and move the climate priorities. So hopefully you'll have a chance to do that. I will also send that in the follow-up email. So if you don't have a chance to do that now and you want to just sit back, relax, listen to Heather chat, don't worry about that. We will send it afterwards. So thank you so much, Jen, for putting in that in the chat. And Jen, how are you today? I've been yapping this whole time and I want to hear from you now.
Well, I am doing excellent. Absolutely. I will just second the encouragement to take that survey. It is so important. I took it as soon as I could. I also wanted to share as well, we've got some big news from the Zero Waste team. We are launching our inaugural Zero Waste Leadership Training Program. So this is an exciting opportunity for us to help share and educate the public about what we're trying to do around zero waste and Nashville's Zero Waste Master Plan. It's an in-depth study. So if you want to nerd out with us on all things trash, recycling, composting, construction and demolition waste, I encourage you to apply for our Zero Waste Leadership Training. It's going to be 4 sessions, 4 Zoom sessions, as well as 3 tours. And those tours, this is one of the most exciting bits. You're going to get to tour a transfer station, which is where all of your trash goes before it goes to a landfill. They're going to tour our recycling facility as well and see where all your recycling gets sorted before it's sold and turned into wonderful new goods and products. And also we are going to tour the compost company's composting facility out in Nashville City. So it's a really exciting opportunity if you want to be a leader, especially after today. You're going to learn how to communicate about sustainability, and then you can take our training and learn all of the facts and figures, put those 2 things together and be a zero waste leader. So I hope folks will apply for that. If you're interested in, the deadline is May 22nd. So just wanted to share that. And now let's jump in. So before we jump in, we do need to have a very quick review of our chat. So as always, we like to use the chat to engage all of our participants. If you have thoughts, if you have resources you want to share, you can put it in the chat. If you also have questions for our guests, most importantly, please put those in the chat. So the way to do that, make sure you set your chat to say to everyone, not just hosts and panelists, but to everyone. That way everyone can be a part of the conversation and be able to respond to questions or thoughts that you might have. So to practice that, feel free. I'm going to ask y'all a question. Ask if anybody's actually filled out the CAP survey, the Climate Action Plan survey. If anybody's filled that out, let us know in the chat. Or if maybe you've heard about the Zero Waste Leadership Training and you've applied for that. So share those with us in the chat. Make sure you're familiar with how to use it, because again, that is where we're going to get all of your questions that we asked to our very special guest, Heather, today. So, oh my gosh, look at all these yeses. Lots of yeses on the survey. That's fabulous.
Love the yeses, using those voices. Love it. Wonderful. So I think we are all set. We've got all that housekeeping out of the way. And now we're ready to dive into the reason that you're here, to learn how to communicate for sustainable change. And so we have a wonderful guest here today, Heather Lose, the editor-in-chief for the Tennessee Conservationist. And she is going to tell us a little bit about her own journey with sustainability and how she kind of has tips for communicating for sustainable change. Very, very excited to have you here, Heather. And whenever you're ready, Jen can stop sharing her screen, and Heather, you can go ahead and share yours, and we are ready to go. So welcome, Heather. Thank you so much. And we're so excited to hear from you.
Oh, Christina, Jen, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, fantastic. So I'm just going to dive right in. I want to thank Urban Green Lab and Zero Waste Nashville for having me today, and for all of the good work you guys do. It is so super important. And I'm here to talk about three of my favorite things today: communications, sustainability, and change. All three together are kind of magic. So here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to give you a little bit about me and the Tennessee Conservationist, the magazine that I work for. We're going to talk about three different types of people and go over some messages that will resonate with these three different types of people, because everybody's different, right? And we're going to talk about the three spheres of influence that every single person has: you, me, everybody. We're going to kind of put those two, smash those together. So 3 times 3 equals a million different ways to advocate for sustainable change. I'm going to give you an invitation to subscribe to the Tennessee Conservationist, and then hopefully we'll have some questions and some discussion at the very end of today's Lunch and Learn. So my name is Heather Lose. Very nice to meet you. I am a pre-K Nashvillian. Grew up there, love the city more than life itself. My husband, John, and I moved away from Nashville to a wilderness preserve up on the Cumberland Plateau in December 2020. And that's me on a hike. John probably took that photo. We've been saving hemlocks and enjoying the stars. But I still come to Nashville at least once a week. I work for TDEC for Tennessee State Parks, and the Tennessee Conservationist is the official publication of Tennessee State Parks. So I will never lose touch with the beautiful city of Nashville, Tennessee. My career has been in graphic design and communications and media, and I am a bit of a change agent. The reason: I believe we can build the world that we want to live in, basically. If things aren't the way we like them or the way that we can envision them, I think it's up to us as individuals and groups to take steps in the right direction. So with that in mind, I co-founded a couple of entities in Nashville to help make it a place I wanted to live in. And I learned some things doing that I'm going to share with you today. In 2013, I co-founded the Nashville Community Darkroom. Nashville's a creative town. We need a place for people to process their film and make prints. So we made that happen. In 2016, I co-founded community radio station WXNA Nashville, which sort of rose from the embers of WRBU, but now it's its own man. And everybody in Nashville, if you're not listening to WXNA, you need to, because it is just a masterpiece and something that I'm so proud of. And so I think as a part of these two experiences, I was brought to Tennessee state parks and was hired as a change agent to basically pull the Tennessee Conservationists apart and put it back together for a new audience. We are currently celebrating 85 great years, and it is absolutely my honor to work at this esteemed publication, and it's also a lot of fun. So when I was brought on board the magazine, it was pretty apparent to me as sort of a print person that in order to truly call ourselves the Tennessee Conservationists, a few things needed to change. It was a glossy publication. It was really pretty, and it was printed with soy inks on partially recycled paper. Some of my colleagues had been there forever and doing just a fantastic job with very little resources. So I want to make sure that I mention Louise Zepp, who is a longtime editor, and Jeff Law, who is the longtime art director, because they, just ran with this ball forever. So when I came in, we kind of took a look at what was on the market, and glossy paper, although it's pretty for photographs, it really can contain some bad actors. And soy ink, although it sounds green, is sort of notoriously hard to clean up after a project has been printed. The solvents needed are really, really toxic. So you sort of negate any sustainability that you would have by using soy ink. So while the magazine was kind of there, it was making really good strides, there was still a way to go. So I decided that we would move the paper stock from a glossy stock to a 100% post-consumer recycled sheet. And I'm guessing everybody here knows what that is. It was made by a company called Roland up in Canada. So I want to hip you guys to this paper. This is amazing. Okay, so the cool thing about the paper that we print on now is called Roland Enviro print. And what it is it's 100% post-consumer recycled paper. It's made without cutting down even one tree. But the manufacturing plant is located 8 miles away from a landfill. So one of the guys working there one day had the brilliant idea of saying, why don't we harvest all of that methane, all of that biogas that's being produced by that landfill, and literally pipe it over to the plant and get our energy needs from that methane. And that's what they did. They literally pipe this stuff over, and they get 93% of the power that they need to run this paper plant from the methane. So they're keeping this bad stuff out of our air and putting it where it's useful. And I could not think of a better sheet for us to use to publish on. I mean, it's just a brilliant, innovative, gorgeous sheet of paper. So we had the paper part down. The next thing I wanted to tackle was conventional printing. What we call offset printing, conventional printing, typically anything that's not being printed digitally. It involves the use of inks and then solvents on the back end. So the paper runs through 4 vats of ink to get all those beautiful colors. They're all made with 4 different colors of ink: cyan, which is kind of a bluish green; magenta, which is what it is; yellow; and black. So all of these inks go onto the paper, and then the solvents in them, which are typically pretty dangerous VOCs, evaporate into the air, leaving the ink on the paper as a result. Now, in contrast, there's a newer form of printing, one that's typically used for signage and metal and other things like this. They print on plastic with UV printing. It's a non-toxic substance, and it stays in liquid form until it is run under UV light. That's why it's called UV printing. So when the UV light hits this ink on paper, cures it immediately, no evaporation, far fewer VOCs, no solvents needed to clean it up. So it's useful in a couple different ways. It cures quickly in the humidity of Tennessee summers. It doesn't have time to sink into the paper, so it stays right on top. So our photos look really, really pretty. It's healthy for the pressmen. They're not inhaling all of these crazy VOCs. And it's just a beautiful, clean, sustainable way of getting images on paper. So I do want to mention our printer in Clarksville, Jostens, who can print on UV. They're also close, and so the transport time is minimized. I love using a Tennessee printer for our magazine. All right, so now you know a little bit about where I'm coming from, and here I am with Louise and Jeff. This is one of the first few issues that we printed at Jostens with the new formula, and you can see kind of how proud we all are. So before we get into the specifics of my talk today, I think I just want to talk a little bit, just a few things before we dig in. How do we communicate with others about issues of sustainability? I think it's helpful to first take a look at ourselves. Okay, so what do you care about, right? What resonates with you? What are you concerned about? We can't fight every single fight. There's a lot right now. And I think that, if we try to go out there with our spears up and curing everything, we're just going to burn out and we're going to make everybody around us mad. Okay. So what works for me is to kind of pick my top 3 or 4 issues and really focus on those and really talk about those. They could change from week to week. All right. You're not locked in. One day you may be really concerned about bottled water. The next day you may be concerned about food waste. Right. But focus in a little bit. It helps you from going crazy, and it helps your friends from going crazy. Understanding that not everyone we know is on the same page. I think this is really important. The education rate about these issues varies widely. Okay. We are all works in progress. Some folks have so much on their plate that recycling really is, kind of a blind spot. And I think that understanding that from the get-go and being kind is really the way to approach this. You may have to go slow. It may be hard, right? If you can stay well and positive in your own heart, I think you can help others. It's kind of like the oxygen mask on the plane, right? So self-care is really important, and and realizing, it does nobody any good to become bitter and fearful and scared, even though there's a lot going on right now. So assuming positive intent, right? Assuming that people are coming to things from their best place, just like you are, I think is really the big-hearted way to do this, and staying in that headspace can be important. Finally, I think understand that donating money and voting and holding our, speaking truth to power is very important. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Okay, so oops, there we go. All right, so when I first got into community radio, I learned a lot about fundraising, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. We had to build a bunch of money up to start this radio station. And so I did a bunch of research, and according to the experts, quote, quote, there are 3 types of people out there, and how we try to motivate them will succeed or fail, depending on how well we match our message to our target audience. And listen, that's all that communication is, right? Figuring out your message, figuring out your target audience, and then figuring out what is going to resonate, what's going to cut through like all of the stuff that people are getting on a daily basis. Okay, so we can boil it down to, and this is very simple, and that's by design. So we can boil it down to 3 types, primary types: head people, heart people, and wallet people. And I'm going to go into this a little bit later, but it's important right from the get-go to understand that we're a combination of these things, right? And as we go through life, sometimes that changes. You know, if I lose my job, I'm going to turn into a wallet person really fast, right? So it's sort of a sliding scale, but it's all very, very interesting. So, okay, let's talk about head people first. Head people, there are scientists, there are Virgos, there are project managers, right? So if you're trying to get a head person to, let's say, and I'm going to use this as an example throughout this whole little illustration. Let's say we're trying to get a head person to stop buying bottled water, okay? Maybe what you would do is show them data on the manufacturer process. Talk about the plastic products, how these materials can include benzene and styrene and all of this stuff, which is toxic to human health. You can talk to them about how worldwide the energy tied up in bottled water is equivalent to 400 million barrels of oil each year, right? Like, get to the stats. Head people like stats. They want the data. And sometimes they need time to go away, research it on their own, just to be able to be there on the same page with you. Okay, head people, they love research, and they're gonna make sure that what you're telling them is true. So if you're talking to a head person, do your research, get in there with some stats, be scientific, and you may be able to get them to join you in the non-bottled water world. Okay, so let's talk now. Heart people. I'm pretty much a heart person. Heart people, they're the do-gooders. You know, they want to be positive. They want to live a good life. They want to feel connected. So you can appeal to these people by maybe telling them about how plastic ends up in the ocean. You can talk about the plastic island. You can talk about wildlife. You can talk about, you know, the people who have to live within plastic in other countries, right? You can talk to them about how, okay, if you buy a filter and put it on your faucet, you know, you can still have clean water without all of that plastic that's going to have negative effects. The point here is not to be overly morbid or depressing, but to share ways that heart people can really like live their values, right? Building a better world with every decision that they make. It's really empowering. Okay, wallet people, as you might imagine, these are the folks that really are interested in the bottom line. They're fiscally responsible, you know? So telling them how the energy required to, let's say, transport and recycle plastic often exceeds the cost to make them, you know, that might resonate with them. Again, you can talk to them about buying a filter. You know, this is a long-term investment that will pay off in the long haul. That way you don't have to buy all that bottled water. You know, think about, I mean, you know, the plumbing system that we have here in America is one of, you know, the greatest inventions ever. Like, why wouldn't you use it? Buy a filter, right? So, you know, these are the people that are interested in the long-term investments. These are people that they're interested in, you know, the fiscal ramifications of what they're doing. So you've probably already noticed, like I brought up the idea of a filter for the heart people and the wallet people, and I'm sure we could make a case where somewhere where, you know, the head people, we could talk to them about water filters as well. Some messages cross lines, okay? So, you know, you can have someone, you know, maybe they're a little head, little heart, little wallet, little head. And you can think about your message and target it accordingly, okay? this is an imperfect science, by the way, for imperfect people. And you may not get it right each time. I think the important thing is to just keep trying. And one thing I do want to go into too, and I was going to do this at the beginning of my presentation, sometimes you have to weigh the value of the relationship that you have with an individual or an entity versus the message that you feel you need to get across. You know, it does no good to alienate a dear friend because she doesn't have a recycling bin in her kitchen. You know, you can always, you know, find a way to get over that, right? So that is important. So the message is important. I think it's also very important to understand that we have layers of influence, right? In this graphic here, like you are that little dot. So your immediate sphere of influence, your friends, your family. Next comes, you know, the community, you know, maybe the PTA group that you're a part of, your church, your school. And then after that, we've got, you know, I didn't really know what to call this, but I just called it institutional, right? The big ticket entities that often generate policy. Okay, you can influence these entities. I mean, the Climate Action Plan survey, everybody needs to be taking that, right? So how we speak will be determined by who we're speaking to, right? It goes without saying that I speak differently to my best girlfriends than I do my boss, or, you know, if I ran into an elected official. So it helps to remember that our world is only as big as the limitations that we place on ourselves, and our voices can carry, they really can, just like the song, just like Amy Mann said. So when we put this together, we can imagine all the possibilities for all the different messages that we could send related to sustainable change. There is no one way to talk about sustainability. The possibilities are endless. And so I'm just going to kind of go through a little bit of a rundown. This is a simple slide, but I've got a lot of notes. So here we go. Here are some ways to advocate for sustainable change. I think one of my favorites, of course, since I work at the Tennessee Conservationist, is to tell a story. This works really well with your immediates and your community. Maybe you can tell about how you saw a presentation on chicken processing plants and how the chicks were treated that led to your decision to eat less meat or give it up entirely. You know, that story, that backstory is going to carry a lot more weight than, let's say, just an advertisement or something that you see someplace. That's actually part of my story. And when I tell people that, you know, it makes them think. So tell a story, be a positive role model, you know, show up places with your water bottle. It's very simple. Serve water in pitchers and, you know, provide cups at your next office function, right? Don't serve bottled water. Order thoughtfully when you go out so that there's not a bunch of food waste at the end of the meal that you can't take to the Ryman because you're going to a concert. You know, these little things that people will see, you don't even have to talk about it. You can just kind of live in a sustainable way and hopefully influence others who see what you're doing and go, wow, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe I'll do that next time too. Social media, man, listen, we used to live in a world of top-down media is what they called it. And, you know, we were looking at advertisements and we were hearing radio and we were watching TV and everything was coming to us. And that is not the case anymore. I mean, we live in a world now where we are all what we call content producers, right? We are all influencers, okay? Social media is one of the best places to share and get these messages out. So you can write about your values. You can simply share an article that you find interesting and maybe tell a little bit about why you're sharing it. I'm seeing a lot of posts right now about no mow May. Maybe you guys are seeing that too. The idea is spreading. I'm seeing it kind of like spread out over my Facebook, and it's a glorious thing to see in the comments where people go, oh, wow. Okay, so you're not going to mow your lawn in May to give the pollinators a good chance at all of that nectar and all of that pollen. And then you'll mow eventually, but you're just going to let those wildflowers be for a little while, which is the natural order of things. When you share that and somebody reads it, and then they'll write a comment, wow, I never thought about that, right? Your immediates, your family, your friends, they know you and they love you. They respect you. Okay. So a simple share of something you care about with some heartfelt words can really affect positive change. Being direct, making your voice heard, saying what's on your mind. Well, yes, sometimes this works better with certain audiences than others. I think especially to the institutional realm, if you see an opportunity to speak out, take it. If you're dealing with someone in your kitchen or in their kitchen, you can do it in a loving way, address ideas of sustainability. One thing the magazine has started doing, which I try to do also, is to say, here's what I'm doing, and here's an idea for you. So that it's not just about, pointing fingers or shaking your finger at somebody or calling somebody out. That said, maybe you do need to be direct with some of the bigger agencies and some of the more institutional entities in your life. Again, it's on that sliding scale, right? So you're always kind of judging like, okay, what is this relationship? Is it someone close? You'll talk to them differently than you will talk to Amazon. If you talk to Amazon, I don't typically do that, but maybe you do. Okay. Praising the good where you see it. Of course, if people or businesses or politicians are doing good things, let them know you notice. I mean, that is so huge. Saying thank you, writing a quick note, holding them up, lifting them up on social media. All of these things you can do directly with a letter. There's a million ways to do this. And I think it's very powerful that we don't always focus on the negative, but when we see somebody doing the right thing, that we say thank you and we let them know that we notice. This is an important one. Don't assume, okay? Some of us are more privileged, better educated. We have different geographic, financial, physical situations. All right. I've been guilty of this, taking a walk around Inglewood and being mad because one of my neighbors is putting all their recyclables into the regular trash can, right? Don't assume. So maybe they don't have a recycling bin, or they could be new to the city and not know how to recycle, or maybe they don't have access to a solid internet to learn where to drop off their items. I mean, don't assume, ask. You can do a lot more good by understanding the barriers or the situation first before jumping in with a solution. Okay. Pressuring people in organizations. We can put the heat to organizations' feet in a lot of different ways. And I think it's important to do that, to be a little bit of a rabble rouser, to be a little bit of a burr under the saddle. Once, I still feel bad about this. It was during the height of COVID and we were all in lockdown, and I needed some shower curtain rings, right? So what did I do? I went to Lowe's, ordered it online. It came in a giant box, completely unnecessary. I mean, there's this like tiny little nugget of product in this giant box with all of this packing material. And I mean, it was just gross, right? So I had to, understand that I had part in this, but I also made a picture and I called him out on Twitter. It was noticed, and a company representative got in touch and promised they'd do better. Now, I would never do this to a good friend of mine ever, or probably, to a community organization. But, pressuring institutions in public ways can have an effect. It's a branding issue for them. They don't want to be known as a non-green corporation. And I, children are really good at calling out their elders and their family. And maybe we can learn a little something from them about how to do that without harming our relationships. So, if you see kids around that are pressing for change, take a cue from them. Building a team. As we know, there is power in numbers. So if you're interested in a recycling or composting program at the office, for example, figure out which colleagues would be on board with that and go to your boss together. The more the merrier. Grassroots organizations, I'm thinking about, let's see, Nashville Tree Conservation Corps. These great organizations started just because one individual or two individuals cared. Bell's Bend, right, would already be developed if the neighbors in that area hadn't stood up together. So power in numbers, build your team, make your case. And that leads to friendly competition. This can happen within families. Which kid can pick up the most trash during a hike, right? Which group at the office can throw out the most trash? Some people are really motivated by competition. So, there are great ways to do that. I know that Tim Green does the hike-a-thon, and it's a raging success. People love it. So think about how you can build competition into these methods for promoting sustainable change. That said, also volunteering. Hey, if you're going to participate in something like a river cleanup, let your people know and invite them to come along. Show up for council meetings where important issues related to sustainability are being discussed, and let people know you're doing that. Make your voice heard. Talk to neighbors about issues of zoning. Get out there. Tree canopy regulations. Put your body and your mind and your mouth to work in places that are visible to others. It empowers them to do the same. It can be scary that first time you try something, that first time you stand up, or that first time you get on the mic at a council meeting to speak your heart, to talk about green issues. If you do it, you might be empowering somebody else to do the same. So show people that it's not hard. It's hard, but we do it anyway, right? Right. Okay. Voting with your wallet and saying why. I think voting with your wallet's great, but you got to say why. Okay. Here's an example. My husband and I, we just love the food at this one takeout in East Nashville, especially during COVID. But we didn't love the plastic and styrofoam that they used. So every time we went in, we would talk gently to the cash register attendant about it, and this went on for a little while. And finally, we just told them we could no longer be buying their food because we just couldn't bear. We would go in and there would be stacks upon stacks of styrofoam behind the counter, and it would just became something that we just could no longer support. And we told them, we're not going to see you anymore. And you know what? They actually started using compostable containers. Now, I'm not saying that this was our victory. I like to think that there were others in the community who were also talking about these issues. But it felt like a total win to us. We could order guilt-free from this restaurant that we love so much, support a small business. And it was just awesome. It's also critical to do this at the institutional level. Pay attention to organizations, again, praise the good, that champion sustainability, purchase from B corporations, small businesses that make it a mission to be more sustainable. If somebody praises something you're wearing that you bought secondhand, say thank you, and tell them why. Tell them why you decided to vote with your wallet to buy something that's reused as opposed to fast fashion, right? Stay open and engaged. We are all learning, right? Let's all be kind to ourselves. I think it's important to acknowledge this. especially to the people around us, our inner core, our immediates, for two reasons. One, because it's true. And if we stay open and engaged, we can become innovators. Second, it keeps us off our high horses, right? That's, I mean, ask Casey Musgraves. That is not a good place to operate from. If we push for sustainability, especially among our immediates, I mean, it does carry that risk. We can become bitter and negative. I mean, there's a lot going on right now. Again, so staying open to hearing other stories, asking, staying engaged in our own development as people concerned with sustainability helps us keep on keeping on, with a positive intent, and also be people that they still invite to their parties. Which I like parties. Don't expect perfection. This is hard for me. It's the enemy of the good. We know this, right? Moving the needle from red to green is a process, right? There's a lot of, I don't know what colors in between there, but acknowledge that, celebrate the small wins, like a Twitter message from Lowe's. I mean, that was a small win. It made me feel good. Made me want to keep doing it, right? One of the things that I learned about fundraising for radio stations is that people are much more inclined to act if you ask them to do something easy. Of course, we are jam-packed right now. There's a million things going on, and we don't want to do anything that's hard. If it's hard, we don't want to do it, right? If it's easy, we might think about it. Okay, so shopping and selling on Poshmark is easy. Setting up a recycling bin next to the trash can and using it, easy. Taking the contents of that bin to the recycling center the next time you're going to Trader Joe's, right? Just making a stop at Hillsborough, easy. Composting, easy. Carpooling, very easy. Not mowing your lawn throughout the month of May, maybe the easiest, right? Presentation matters. And this point is very related to my next, which is to focus on the benefits. Okay, this is an old adage, and it's true from the advertising world, right? If I tell you the benefit of doing something, as opposed to just tell you to do it, you're much more inclined to pay attention to the benefit, right? So shopping and selling on Poshmark, here's some benefits. Not only keeps fabrics out of the landfills, cuts down on harmful fast fashion, cheaper on your pocketbook. It's also a great way to find one-of-a-kind garments, and you can turn unwanted items in your closet into cash. So those are all benefits, right, of buying and selling used clothing. Setting up a recycling bin, taking your recyclables to the center on a trip to Green Hills, it feels good. That's a benefit. It also means you have to move those giant garbage bins a lot less frequently. That's a benefit. Composting gives you premium soil for your garden, benefit. Keeps your garbage can from stinking, benefit. Keeps you from having to take it down to the curb a lot less frequently, benefit. Carpooling is fun, benefit. It's social hour. You save money, gives us a chance to learn more about our colleagues. Maybe we get to sing some Bohemian Rhapsody together. That's a benefit. Eliminates extra, you get the picture right here, right? No mow May. Critters get a longer chance to charge up on pollen, gives wildflowers a chance to do their thing, and we see more beauty, and beauty is definitely a benefit. All right, almost through this slide. Thank you for hanging in with me. I know this is a long one. All right, highlighting the health impacts. Wow, these days, people really care about their health. Probably more so than any time that I've been alive, for sure. It's in the forefront of everyone's minds. So how can you relate health to issues of sustainability? Tie them together. Clean air, clean water, clean food. We all want it, right? How do we get it? Well, most of the folks on this webinar probably know how sustainability impacts these things in a positive manner. Talking about them may help the light bulb go on for our immediates, and speaking truth to power definitely can help affect institutional change. And I've got a story for you here. I love this. So a few years back, I wrote a letter to the mayor of New Orleans to tell her how dismayed I was by all the overflowing trash cans at French Quarter Fest. If you've never been to French Quarter Fest, you didn't hear it from me, but it is the best festival down there. It is so much fun. They've got stages all through the French Quarter, but there were trash cans, y'all. And I mean, they were so overflowing with trash that there was trash just sort of pooled at the base of all of these trash cans. And I was just horrified, I was just horrified. So I wrote to the mayor and appealed to her as a leader of her port town, a city on the water that should be the most concerned about healthy waterways. I mean, can you think of a town other than New Orleans that needs to be more concerned about healthy water? I can't. And she actually wrote back to me, and I was really impressed. So the next year, French Quarter Fest, they offered these reusable cups. And they were cool. They were branded with the festival's logo, and you got, like $1 off or whatever, every time you went to refill your cups. And there were so much less trash. It just warmed I just couldn't believe it. It made me so happy. Now I'm guessing that I was not the root cause of this. I was not the only one that brought this up. But putting the pressure on and relating it to health, maybe it made just a tiny little difference. I'll never know. But did I write back to her and thank her? Yes, of course I did, because that's what we do, because we're Southern and we praise the good, right? Right. Okay, so I think the bottom line here is, we just got to normalize sustainability. Okay. Ultimately, we've got to become a society that does what we can to push back against global warming, inefficiencies, indifference, and wasteful policies. So, things like plastic bag bans, bringing your own containers to restaurants, driving fuel efficient cars. I mean, the list is endless. If we brand ourselves as individuals who care, right? Truly care, and do what we can to our friends and our family members, I think that's a great start. And, we can really, really, like we said, affect that sustainable change. So I want to thank everybody at Urban Green Lab and Zero Waste Nashville for having me today, especially Christina and Jen. And I'd like to invite anyone who is interested in sustainability to subscribe to the Tennessee Conservationist. I've got our website here, and we're offering $5 off a 1-year print and digital subscription using the promo code GREEN, of course. And you'll get 6 beautiful issues on that beautiful paper with UV printing. Here are a couple of spreads from some recent issues. And I want to thank you, yes, you, for listening and being a green change agent. It's really on us to do everything we can to focus on those few issues and see what positive effects we can foster for our glorious planet. So I think that ends my what we call formal presentation. Are there any questions, or do we want to have a discussion now?
Okay, I'm going back. There has been a hot chat that we have had here going, which has been fabulous. So there was one question in there that I went ahead and answered, but the rest of them, let me pull them up. And for folks, if you have other questions that you have for Heather, don't forget, put those in the chat. We'll keep collecting those. I've only got a few here so far, but we'll start off with Karen. And she asked, have you, she was talking about, this was when you were talking about the paper, the Roland paper. Have you promulgated this paper printing to other organizations in the Tennessee government? And if not, can we, can she, can us, can they help?
I talk up Roland every chance I get, as you might imagine. It's such a beautiful example of innovation, and the product is so quality. Yes, I have talked about this paper to other organizations. Now, whether they have decided to use it as well, I really don't know. We had note cards printed on this paper. I mean, I just use it every time I can. Oh, there was something else I was going to say, and it flew right out of my head. So sorry.
Oh, that's great. Okay, our next question is, oh, and then somebody wanted to know if you can post their information. If we can get a link or something to share with our guests today.
On Roland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do it right now. We can get it later, and then we can make sure to share that in our follow-up email. If you have
Okay.
some information, we can share it that way.
Absolutely. They have a fantastic website. And they're also on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I think Facebook, maybe even Twitter as well.
We'll get all of the things. We'll send it out to folks so we can get that. Our next question, Ursula had asked, so you have your big list that you were going through, and I know there was a little conversation about this in the chat, but she says that she didn't see anything on your list about educating the next generation. So do you have any thoughts or advice on this?
What I have found is that the next generation is oftentimes educating us. Whitney Houston, the children are our future. It is so obvious to me that a lot of the next generation, I mean, they're there already. Now, if that is not the case, I think one of the most important things you can do with kids is get them outside, get them to a lake, take them on a hike, start to show them the wonders of nature. You take them to a Tennessee State Park. I mean, we've got 56 beautiful parks across the state. Each one is different. Take them on a camping trip. I think you're only going to care about the stuff you care about. And if children that have not been given the resources to build their own personal relationship with the great outdoors, could really use our help to do that. Okay, so if you are able to take a child out and show him or her or they wildflowers and turtles and trees and talk to them about the natural world, I think they'll start to care about it. And then you can start to have conversations about not littering. You can start to have conversations about recycling. You can start having conversations about keeping that water clean, and it will resonate.
I cannot agree more about getting out and getting into nature. I hear that often suggested just to get kids out there. I know it's part of MNPS's kind of their goals for students as well. Now I'm just thinking about my childhood in playing in the creek. Okay, moving on to our next question. Naomi asks, she says, Heather, I live in Nashville. I'm an editor as well of a print magazine. Love your suggestions on how to make that more green. And I wonder how you deal with accusations of wokeness. I'm starting to get this a lot from our readers when we cover issues such as ESG, investing, and climate change in our magazine.
Wow. Yeah, that's a rough one. I think that becomes a defensive mechanism for people. I think that again, like moving to the, here's what we are doing, make it inclusive. For a long time, I was trying to find a way to run a column on sustainability in the Tennessee Conservationist, right? And we know that, you know, wagging fingers at people and saying, this is what you should be doing, you know, I mean, it can foster that kind of defensive position. So what we did is we teamed up with Go Green With Us, which is a fantastic organization within Tennessee State Parks that is really trying to help the parks, give the parks tools to become more sustainable. So now they have a regular column in the publication, and it's basically, here's what we're doing. Here are a couple tips for you. I'm not sure that this is really answering your question. I think that there are some people in the world that are very, very threatened by change. They're just going to say no to it immediately. They're just going to put a wall up. And I think with those people, you just keep being kind, keep chipping away at it, keep being positive, keep being engaged. Don't get bitter, don't get mad. And then hopefully someday they'll come around.
I think that's just excellent advice. Amanda asks, I would greatly appreciate tips for how to start a respectful, curious, personal conversation with a new neighbor about recycling or other such topics.
Ah, yes. Yeah, it's Nashville. Go over there with a casserole, you know, be the welcome wagon, first, and then play dumb. You know, did you know that we have here, you know, I'm your neighbor. Did you know that we have a recycling program? Did you know that they come on Tuesdays? How can I help you learn more about this? Here are the benefits of recycling. It's great. You may notice that my bin is only out at the curb once a month. And that's because all of this other stuff gets recycled. You may also notice that I've got a compost bin. So, you know, I think it's just a matter of being kind, asking questions, easing them into it, and definitely take them a casserole.
I love it so much. It definitely works. Okay, I have one more question. I keep seeing a lot in the chat, so if I miss any questions, please don't hesitate to throw them back in the chat for me so they're at the top of the list, because I'm at my last question that I have captured, and that's Pat asks, is the Conservationist available as a download instead of paper?
Absolutely. We have a $12 subscription for digital only.
All right. Christina, did you happen to notice if I missed anything? This has been a really exciting chat. I know I'll have to go back and look. There's a lot of recycling questions that I'll try and go back and address for folks as well. But I think it's been mostly conversation. So if anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, there was one question from Ursula, it looks like, that we might have missed. By speaking truth to power, do you mean advocating in the Tennessee legislature? There's been only a little progress in law around sustainability, and the legislature has even stopped Metro Nashville from pursuing certain things, though enacting state law, and has been ungiving to the TDEC commissioner on certain issues. So maybe a little bit more on that speak truth to power, if you don't mind.
Yeah. You know, it's hard sometimes. I used to live out in California, you know, and Tennessee can be rough. You know, you may be referring to the plastic bag, you know, the ban of the plastic bag. I don't know what. Yes, I think it is important to continue to let our elected officials know that this is an issue for us. And that starts, you know, with Metro Council, you know, all the way up to the governor. You know, let them know how you feel. They want your votes. Okay. That's currency to them. If you don't let them know, if we don't let them know, I'm going to include myself in this because, you know, I'm here too. If we don't do the work of letting them know that it's important, then, they won't know, and they won't vote on those issues the way that perhaps if we all work together as a team, maybe they would at least give it a second thought, right?
Yeah, Heather,
And I don't know if that's a very good answer. It can be hard sometimes.
And I think the whole thing that you've been saying today, Heather, is just trying it out, always having that kindness in your heart, but understanding that these tough conversations do have to happen.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. And I will give a little teaser that next month's episode, you will have a chance to speak your truth to power, and we'll leave it at that. We're going to have hopefully an interesting conversation next month with some folks who do have some decision-making power. And so hopefully everything that you've learned from this month's episode with our lovely guest, Heather, will be useful in the chat next month. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll give you more information and be able to register like we always do in a follow-up email. But I do think I just want to make sure, because I don't know, Jen, if you saw a couple.
There were a couple other quick questions. I'm going back up. And you may or may not have an answer for this, Heather, but Keith was wondering about any way to repurpose mixed plastic into construction materials. And I know there was some stuff that was floating through the chat on that, but if you had any additional thoughts.
Yeah. Gosh, there is a place, trying to think of the name of it, where you can actually send stuff and they'll make benches out of it. It's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. They'll make benches out of cigarette butts and stuff. There's a business on the east side called the Filling Station. I believe they have don't go over there with a bunch of plastic, please. But maybe get in touch with them first. I believe that they have a bin there where they collect these items like in a big box and send them to this organization. And as soon as I remember the name of this organization, they're doing some really important work with recycling and just taking these plastics and making new things out of them, benches and whatnot.
I wonder, is it TerraCycle?
Yes. Yes.
We'll be sending some stuff about TerraCycle in the follow-up as well. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I know there's right now, especially for number 5 plastics, we're hoping our facility can't effectively sort number 5 plastics right now. So we're hoping that will change in the future, but TerraCycle takes number 5, and it is something that does have a market. So if you can send that stuff there. Excellent suggestion. Okay, Ed asks, can you expand your reach by writing a column in the Nashville Post? Use real examples of how companies created revenue and cut costs. I don't know if I think that was to you.
I mean, if they want me to write a column, I'll write it.
Anybody here from the Nashville Post? Get in contact with Heather.
And then we have one from Mikey that says, how important is it to buy local and domestically sourced climate smart commodities?
I think it's incredibly important to do that when you can. Absolutely. Again, it comes to, voting with your wallet. Buying local, it cuts down on transport costs. You're supporting your neighbors. All of that, super, super important. Yes.
And I think that was the last question. We had a few folks in the chat talking about the TerraCycle boxes and where you can find them. There's one at the Goodwill. Okay. And with that, unless anybody else has another question, or Christina, if you've seen anything that I've missed, this has been wonderful, wonderful conversation today and wonderful information, Heather. I cannot thank you enough for being here today and talking with us. This has been so interesting and informative, and I know I will take a lot of lessons learned today into the work that I do. And it sounds like other folks will be doing that as well. So.
And Christina, it's truly been my honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, folks. I guess that's it. That wraps us up for today. We'll be sending, everybody will get a copy of the chat as well as all of the links, including a link to today's episode. And then we'll try and compile all these resources that we've been thrown out today and get those into an email to everybody probably tomorrow. It might take us a minute. So give us a minute and we'll get it out to you this week. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye now.